and he says hello. Mr. Katz, it's a pleasure. How are you today, pal? Okay?
I'm good, Chris. Better today than last couple days. It's nice to get my life back a little bit.
Well, it's great to see you. Obviously, we love this conversation every year, so let's get right to it. Big picture first. Easier, I just read the Peter King thing, at least part of it. Easier process this year. More teams are pretty good. You got an easier scenario with the West Coast playing the West Coast with the Raiders and the Niners, so the travel's a little easier. It seems to me, first impression, a little easier to put together in 2018. Is that correct?
Well, easy is not exactly a word I would use when it comes to doing the schedule. I will tell you that there are more teams that we were able to utilize and count on in more different places, and that was really helpful. But the other thing is, just from a technical standpoint, we were able to access 1,000 computers this year. So we had a lot of firepower and could every day attack the schedule from a lot of different angles. So one of the things that was different this year, we usually start by figuring out what game is going to be the kickoff game, who the Super Bowl champions are going to host, and kind of work from there. And this year, the Eagles had so many opponents that we considered that we really started pretty wide in the search and then just kept narrowing and narrowing. But the fact that we had all the computer power that we did really helped the process a lot. The interesting thing, you mentioned that the West is playing the West. That's true, and it made the travel easier. On the other hand, it gives us a lot of late games, and that's not always a good thing. So we had to be smart about how we used a lot of those games in prime time.
All right, we'll get to some specifics in a minute. Did you feel obligated to give Fox so-called a better Thursday night schedule than maybe in the past because they're the new entry into the Thursday night market and spend a ton of money? So do you feel then obligated to give them some better marquee games? How about that for a sec?
It wasn't a matter of obligation. It was a matter of cooperation. Look, they said to us that they wanted to utilize some of their Sunday afternoon doubleheader quality games on Thursday night. And the trick for us was really trying to figure out how we could do that and still leave them with enough quality inventory in other doubleheader windows. So, yeah, we thought we upgraded Thursday night, but we did that because we had one partner who also was a Sunday afternoon partner. And, look, the last couple of years, it was tricky because we had to create two Thursday broadcast packages, one for CBS, one for NBC, and they had to be pretty comparable. We had to make sure that we didn't load the first half at the expense of the second half. And this year, having one partner made it easier, particularly when that partner said, utilize some of our better Sunday afternoon games.
All right, excellent answer. The great Howard Katz, who does it once a year for us. We appreciate it. All right, how about ESPN? Now, you said you had a little easier scenario with Fox. You don't want to get, ESPN's got a new crew in there now. I looked through the ESPN schedule. It looked like they had a better marquee lineup of games than they've had in the past. Is that true, or is that my imagination?
No, I think it's true. But, I mean, every year we try to put together a strong schedule for each of our partners. I think the ESPN schedule last year looked great on paper, and then they got unlucky with some key injuries that occurred before some of their games, and everything didn't play out in through the season the way we hoped it would when we put the schedule together in April. But if you look at their schedule now, I mean, they got some really strong games, and I just hope everything holds up throughout the season. Look, what pleases us the most about this year's schedule is we think we did well by each of our network partners. We think if you look at each television schedule for each partner, it's awfully strong, and that's the response that we got from them. And we think that there's a minimum amount of ouches, like I like to call them, in the schedules for the teams. I mean, the last caller just pointed out there are three-game road trips, but they're all pretty darn reasonable, and we're pleased with that. I mean, last year there were 7 3-game road trips in the schedule. This year there's only 3. Last year, 5 times a team had to play a road Monday night game followed by a road game, and there's none of those this year. So we think from a team standpoint, we did a pretty good job, and we hope that from a television standpoint we did a good job. But, we'll see how this plays out September through December.
And also, you gave teams a little break having to play teams off a bye, too. Isn't that a big factor here, Howard? Didn't you make sure that there was a lot of complaints of teams saying, boy, I'm playing a team that's on a 10-day respite. That's kind of not fair. Weren't there a lot of complaints of that in the past, and you try to cut back that this year? Is that true?
We certainly addressed it, Chris. Look, for the last couple of years, we've been monitoring the number of times a team has to play a game against a team coming off its bye on the road. Statistically, if you're playing a team off its bye and you're at home, it's not a disadvantage. It's a competitive disadvantage if you've got them on the road. So we've been monitoring that, making sure that no team had to do that more than twice, and we've done that for the last couple of years. But in each of the last 2 years, a team has come to us and said, hey, if you look at the total rest disparity throughout the season, we're a real outlier. So this year, for the first time, we actually paid a lot of attention and threw away dozens and dozens of schedules because rest disparity seemed to be unfair for one or more teams over the course of the entire season. So, yeah, that's something. Look, the clubs get more and more demanding about what's in the schedule, and we try to get more and more sophisticated. But rest disparity was something that played an important role this year for the first time.
All right, tell me, which team was correct when they said we get burned with this? Which team came to you?
Well, a different team came to us each of the last 2 years, and after we realized that it happened twice and there was a big outlier, we made an adjustment.
All right, which teams? I'm curious. Which team? You could tell me. No big deal.
I don't like to single out teams.
All right, so you don't want to. That's fair. I mean, so I won't put you on the spot there. All right. Well, let's do Thanksgiving and let's do London.
Okay.
The London first. The one knock I'd have on London is if I was a Jaguar fan, I would not like the idea that one of the marquee games on my schedule this year, I got really two. The Patriots, all right, opener, I like that. The other one is Philadelphia. I don't play Philly very often, and I get them in my building, which probably hasn't happened in eons, and you stick that game in London. I don't think as a Jag fan, if I'm living in Jacksonville, I'd be happy about that. What's your take on that first? Let me hear.
Well, I think that's a legitimate point. Look, at the time that we scheduled it, we didn't know that game was going to be as big as it is. I mean, the Eagles agreed to go and play Jacksonville. Jacksonville selected them as a possible opponent, and all this happened before last season played out. So it turned out that game almost is a Super Bowl rematch, right? I mean, Jacksonville was a couple plays away from beating New England, getting into the Super Bowl. So, look, that's a terrific game. We're really happy that we were able to put a game of that quality in London for the fans in London. We think it's a great game on the NFL Network schedule. You're right. If I was a Jacksonville Jaguar fan at home, I'd be a little disappointed that I don't have that game in my home stadium.
All right. And speaking of Jacksonville, and I live with a Jacksonville fan who's 16 years of age, and he complained to me yesterday about this, and I said, well, I will ask Mr. Katz and get an answer. He said, Dad, explain to me how I go to the AFC Championship game, and I'm only on 2 primetime games, and Houston, who won 4 games last year, are on 3 primetime games. Now, the answer is because of Deshaun Watson. I understand that. I can't tell him that. I understand his point. Did Jacksonville get a little disrespected as far as primetime TV coverage is concerned?
Well, I don't look at it that at all. I thought we did really well by Jacksonville for the following reason. New England at Jacksonville, week 2 CBS doubleheader, right?
Right.
Week 5, is it 5 or 6? Week 6, Jacksonville at Dallas, CBS doubleheader. The doubleheader windows are actually more viewed, more heavily watched than the primetime windows. So I look at how we utilize teams in the doubleheader windows, the 425 doubleheader windows, the same way I do in primetime, and we rely very heavily this year on the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I think between the primetime games that they've gotten and the doubleheader windows, I like to feel as though we showed them a lot of respect, and they earned it.
All right, fair. Now, a little birdie told me a week or so ago that maybe the 4:30 window for CBS this year, since New England was playing Minnesota and Green Bay at home and not as many dominant teams, that maybe their CBS would not be happy with their doubleheader games based on the fact that the Vikings and Packers go to Foxborough. That would be an ideal doubleheader game, and the NFL would have trouble making sure CBS was happy there. What's your take on that for a sec?
Well, look at the CBS doubleheaders this year. They've got in the first 16 weeks, there are 8 doubleheader windows. They've got 3 Fox cross-flex games in their doubleheader windows, which was another trick in the schedule. We were able to use 3 doubleheaders of Fox's on CBS. We were able to populate the the Thursday night package with a heavy dose of Fox doubleheader games, and we still left Fox with plenty. I mean, their doubleheader windows are all very, very strong, as are their 1 o'clock anchors. So we would have been a little thin on CBS doubleheaders, but for the fact that we're using some cross-flex games. I mean, CBS doubleheader in week 2, I said, is New England-Jacksonville, rematch of the AFC Championship game a year ago. Their doubleheader in week 4, the Saints and the Giants. And let's see, and in week 6, it's Jacksonville at Dallas. And week 7 is the Cowboys and the Redskins on CBS. So I think the CBS doubleheader windows are pretty strong. And when I talked to Sean McManus and David Burson about it yesterday, they were pretty thrilled.
Boy, I can't get you on anything, Katz. You're too good for me. I mean, I cannot.
No, you've got the right questions. So.
But I can't get you. All right, now why are the Bears and Lions playing twice in 10 days around Thanksgiving?
Well, we are doing something that for only the second time since 1970, and that is 3 big rivalry division games on Thanksgiving. Only the second time it's happened since 1970.
Okay.
And so we think it's a great Thanksgiving. We've got, again, a cross-flex. Bears at Detroit on CBS.
Right.
Cowboys and Redskins on Fox. And then the Falcons visiting the Saints on NBC. So we really wanted to make Thanksgiving, which is our most traditional American holiday, a real traditional classic NFL afternoon and evening. And it just coincidentally played out that the Bears and the Lions play in 10 and 12.
But you can't like that, though. Overall, you would have preferred not to do that. You know, to play a Sunday and then the 10 days later is not desirable for you. You'd prefer that to get around that if you could, correct?
More separation would probably be better. I'll tell you something strange, though. I had a coach come up to me at the owners' meeting in Orlando, and he said, have you ever thought about having us play the same division opponent Sunday before short week Thursday or the Sunday following it? Because we can prepare easier if we're playing the same opponent 2 consecutive weeks. So that's something we may think about for next year.
Oh, in other words, play the same team twice in a row? Wow, something different like that?
I mean, we've never done that before, but actually it was a head coach who said to me, have you ever thought about that? So it's something we're going to think about.
Interesting, Howard. Howard Katz, of course. Giants, Dallas, again, very early in the season. Last year at this very date when you came on, you said, Chris, the one regret I got with this schedule is I got Giants, Dallas opening up again in Dallas on NBC. Now, it's not that
we wouldn't open it up again this year on NBC, and we're not.
Well, you're not, but it's also week 2. It's awfully early, Howard. Did you think about, my goodness, I'm giving a Giant Dallas game that early in the year, right out of the gate? Did you think about that at all?
Yeah, but I think it's a positive. I think it's a great way to get NBC off to a strong start on Sunday Night Football. I mean, it's one of the great rivalries in the NFL. 2 great brands. And yeah, we were pretty conscious in our decision to play that game early in the season on Sunday night.
You were okay. I did notice that everybody.
But I wasn't going to come on again this year if we played it in week 1.
Yeah, then I would have been all over you. Now I did notice that a couple of teams do not play a Thursday night game, and I was under the impression that every team in the league had to play a Thursday night game. Tampa, no Thursday night. Buffalo, no Thursday night. What happened with that?
Well, there were 2 teams that didn't play Thursday night last year because we eliminated the Thursday night games in Week 16. We thought that with the emphasis we've now put on all division games in Week 17 and a heavy dose of division games in Week 16, for a team to play a Thursday night game in Week 16 and then have to come back with a division game in 17, it may have been unfair, not for them, but for their opponent if they had less rest. So last year, we eliminated the Thursday night of Week 16, which meant two teams weren't going to get on Thursday, weren't going to play Thursday night short week games. And it's the same model this year. What I will tell you this year, which is interesting about the schedule, is every single one of our 32 teams has a primetime game.
And last year that was not the case?
That was not the case last year, and it is the case this year. Every team's got a primetime appearance.
All right. Atlanta over Minnesota in Week 1 in Philly. Did you think about that at all? Give me your thought process with the Falcons.
Well, I will tell you that we looked at Atlanta, we looked at Minnesota, we looked at Carolina, and we looked at a division game. We had really 6 options that we looked at for the kickoff game in Philadelphia. And as opposed to locking in one of them, we really looked at this thing much broader. And in all of our computer runs, in solving the total puzzle for 256 games, the Atlanta game fit best.
I understand.
As I said at the beginning, sometimes we just lock into that game and work from there. This year, with all the options, we kind of said, which game can we put in that position that's going to be best in terms of the overall solve for the 256 games, and that was Atlanta.
All right, interesting. I get that now. All right, 2 games are on December 15th, right now scheduled for the same time at 4:30. Browns at Denver, and, of course, the Jets will play Tennessee. Why not play one of those games at night? Is this going to stay?
We are. I mean, I think that was just a glitch in one of the forms that went out. One of those games is going to be at 4:30, and the other one's going to be at 8:20.
Okay, what made you pick? Now, those are not necessarily great, attractive games. That's Saturday, couple Saturdays before Christmas. People will shop. They can mellow out and watch a little football and then go out for a party. They like good football that day, and you put a couple teams in there that might be spotty, and the games might be not so great. Did you think about putting a real big heavyweight game in that window?
Well, we have certain appearance limitations, so we had to find teams where we had primetime appearances left outside of the CBS and Fox packages. And the other thing is our league has become so unpredictable. Who knows what games are going to be really big and meaningful in weeks 15 and 16? I think history has shown us the last couple of years, with so many teams going from worst to first and so many new teams getting into the playoffs, that it's impossible to predict in April what's going to be meaningful in week 15, which is why you see in week 16 there are actually 4 games that are listed date and time TBD. And
I didn't notice that. Week 16, that second to last weekend, you got a TBD on 4 games? Do you really?
There are 4 games: Giants at Indianapolis, Redskins at Tennessee, Baltimore at the Chargers, and Jacksonville at Miami. Those 4 games are all TBD, and 2 of those games are going to wind up on Saturday, one at 4:30 and one at 8:20. And 2 of those games will wind up on Sunday afternoon. And we will make that determination after week 8. So at the end of October, we'll be a lot smarter and we'll know a lot more than we do today. And that's why we were able to get some flexibility from the owners and do something brand new in week 16.
Wow. So in other words, then we'll have 2 games on December 22nd, to make a long story short, correct?
That's right. And it'll be 2 of the 4 games that
you just mentioned.
Listed.
Okay, you're taking a chance with San Francisco. You got them on 5 times. I know big market. I know Garoppolo. But, boy, that's a lot of games. I can see the Rams, who are on 4 times, but the Niners are on 5. Fingers crossed tightly with that, Howard? What's your take on that for a sec?
A little bit, but we believe in them. I mean, I think they went 5-0 down the stretch last year, and they're a hot team. I got to tell you, all of our network partners were screaming, "Give me more 49ers games," and so we addressed that. But yeah, I mean, look, there's risk in every schedule every year in terms of teams that you're relying on. I think we're counting on the 49ers this year.
All right, you only gave Luck 1 television appearance. Would he have gotten more if you knew he was going to be completely healthy?
Probably. Honestly, yeah, probably. We don't really know what to expect.
Because he has the one game against the Patriots, and that's Andrew Luck, and we all know quarterback sells. So you didn't want to go too crazy just in case he can't play, correct?
Yeah, but we also, I just told you, we can move the Giants
Colts game.
In
That's good.
16.
Excellent point. All right, I forgot that.
That's kind of a little bit of protection. If Luck's healthy and the Giants are good, we could play that game on Saturday night of Week 16.
Little surprise, you only gave the L.A. Chargers one primetime game in late. I know you don't want to play them in that building. I understand that, so it's got to be on the road.
Not wanting to play them, they really can't. Because they're on a college campus, there's really strong limitations about when we can and can't play them. So it was sort of just bad luck that we weren't able to get them more. They deserve it. They've earned it. They're a good football team. They're an exciting football team. I would have liked to have seen them on additional primetime games. It just didn't work out because of the limitations of getting into their building.
All right. You got your fingers crossed with the Jets in Week 1 on ESPN against Detroit.
I don't know. You have to cross your fingers in Week 1. Everybody's 0-0, and everybody's an interesting story. I don't know who the Jets quarterback's going to be in Week 1. You don't either. I'd love to start the schedule after the draft as opposed to having to finish it before the draft. But I'm kind of anxious to see what Jet team comes and takes the field in Detroit, and then we have them again in Week 3 in Cleveland.
All right. Now listen, this is my baseball blood coming out of me, so understand. Game 2 World Series, and you've been hurt in that game recently. Game 2 the matchup with the ratings. Game 2 World Series, Saints at Minnesota against that game. And that's a marquee matchup. Everybody's going to show that.
That would be Game 5 of the World Series.
Oh, Game 5. That's Game 5. I'm sorry. That's Game 5, correct, because the World Series starts middle of the week. Howard knows more than I do, for crying out loud. But still, you got to figure there will be a 5th game. Did you put the Saints-Vikings there, a big, juicy game, on purpose against the World Series game that night?
Well, we're not going to stand down against the World Series, and NBC is entitled to get a really strong competitive game to go against the World Series. Look, one of the things I really love about this schedule is look at Sunday Night Football right in the middle of the season. Weeks 8, 9, and 10, right dead center. New Orleans, Minnesota in 8, Green Bay, New England in 9, and Dallas, Philly in 10. That's pretty strong, and that's where we should be.
All right, that Green Bay, New England game is going to be an incredible game because it's the last time probably Rodgers and Brady will go up against each other again. They only do it every 4 years as it is. They're going to do it in Foxborough. I bet you Rodgers has only played one game in his life. Remember, one time Green Bay played in Foxborough, he was concussed. He didn't play in a game. Matt Flynn did. So I can't recall he's ever playing in that city. I am sure the whole world wanted that game. I'm sure Fox wanted that game.
I think they only play every 12 years. But
every 12 years in New England. So he's never played there. So there you go. I'm sure the whole world wanted that game. What made you give it a Sunday night, NBC?
It wasn't about giving it to them. It was how the whole overall schedule's balanced out. I think whether that game was on Fox or whether that game was on NBC, it was going to be huge. And the way the schedule played out, it landed on NBC. It could have just easily landed on Fox. It's one of 18 games on NBC, and it would have been one of 100 on Fox. But I would have been happy with it on either network. It could have been a big doubleheader on Fox or a big Sunday night game on NBC.
All right, last thing, Howard. Give me those little wrinkles that you had to work with that I love to hear about, and maybe the Pope's visiting for instance. Give me a little something, the 3 or 4 little nuggets that the average fan doesn't know that you have to keep an eye on, that somebody said a team asked or you knew about that you wanted to be careful. Whether it's television, whether it's where they play, when their bye week comes in. Give me 2 or 3 of those. Do you have a couple for me or no?
It wasn't that bad this year, Chris. Maybe it was just because we had so much computer power that we were able to work through everything. I will tell you this, that we really wanted to see the Kansas City Rams game, which is being played in Mexico City. We love the idea of that game being on a Monday night. ESPN does a great job with Monday Night Football. They do a great job being able to build up the game with all the programming they have all day long. And we really thought that game would be a great game for Monday night. The problem is that the only date that game could be played was Week 11. It had to be somewhere in Week 11. And we were reluctant to have those two teams play on Monday night and then have to play again on Sunday because we knew they'd get home really, really late, and there are customs issues getting back into the States, back into Kansas City and back into Los Angeles late Sunday night, early Monday morning. So we challenged ourselves to see if it was possible to add 2 extra byes in Week 12. And we were always hesitant to do that because of the 3 games on Thanksgiving. Week 12 is pretty thin anyway. But we were really pleased that we were able to figure out how to make Week 12 Sunday work, even with 2 teams on byes, and that allowed us to get the Kansas City Rams game in Mexico City onto Monday Night Football.
And that's the first time that I can recall in a couple of years that you have given teams a bye week after Thanksgiving. Is that correct?
Well, we've done it in Week 13, either last year or 2 years ago. We actually did. But this is the first time we've had any byes in Thanksgiving week. And I talked to the competition committee when they were in New York a month or 2 months ago and let them know that we were going to probably have 2 byes in Week 12, and they were fine with it. But that was the real wrinkle of trying to figure out how to get that game onto Monday Night Football, and it was all about if we could make the byes work.
And you got less games. That's tremendous. So speaking of byes, it seems like they start after Week 3. Did last year they start after Week 4, or was it after Week 3 last year too?
No, last year we had no byes in Week 4, and they started in Week 5. This year we have 2 byes in Week 4 and 2 byes in Week 5.
All right, the teams hate that early bye. Why'd you have to move up 2 for the Week 4? Any particular reason?
It's just the way the whole puzzle solves. And you know what? You hate a Week 4 bye unless you got a real bad injury in Week 3, and you need to get healthy in Week 4. So.
All right, I miss anything I need to know? Did you tell us everything I needed to know here? Seriously. Did I miss anything?
Everything and more.
Everything and more. No, I don't mean that to get a compliment. I mean that because I got an audience here that has their own little team, and they're going to ask me, why is this team doing that? Why is that team doing this? And I can't answer those questions after you get off the air in 2 seconds. So why don't you? Is there anything?
The only other thing I want to point out to you is that we made a conscious decision this year to move up the start times of the primetime games a little bit. Our fans are always telling us that it would be nice to be able to get these games done by 11:30 on Sunday night or Thursday night or Monday night. So the start times are either going to be 8:15 or 8:20, right, which is earlier, and we think that's a fan-friendly thing for all of our fans, and certainly in the Eastern and Central time zones.
Yeah, and one last thing I just thought of. You guys got to figure out a way to do something on this day. Don't have the information leak. You kill your own network, Howard. You're a TV guy, one of the greats of all. Why? The whole world knew the schedule before NFL Network went on yesterday, 8 o'clock. How could you fix that for next year?
That's a great question, Chris. I wish I could figure out where all the leaks came from and what happened. It's disappointing because we call the clubs earlier in the day because we think it's important for us to walk them through their schedules game by game before they just get it on the air at 8 o'clock. And unfortunately, too many things leaked, and we have to do a better job of fixing that.
Howard, well done. Enjoy your rest of April. Hopefully I can get you on once in a while. Always a pleasure, pal. Appreciate you coming on today.
Take care, Chris. Bye.
Very good. Howard Katz, folks, today. Absolutely. You get every answer you possibly could have wanted in that. Boy, did I enjoy that. 13 in front of the hour. We continue. Mad Dog Unleashed.